what I can say about them, which speaks volumes really, is they're the current recipients of the Agri-Nutrients Balance Farm Environment Awards. Now, for the benefit of our overseas guests, these awards, or this award, is hugely prestigious. It's highly contested. They have regional contests right around the country, and Grant and Bernie are currently the national winners of that award. So without any further ado, I'd invite Grant and Bernie to do their thing. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bruce. It's a real pleasure for us to be here today. We've been involved with the Landcare Trust for 5 years now. More specifically, we've been working with Janet Gregory of the Southland Landcare Trust towards the protection and enhancement of the biodiversity on our property. Janet has been fantastic in her encouragement and knowledge, and with her understanding of how we want to farm the land. And if you look at this picture, it tells a story. It's our story.
It's early autumn. The cow and calf well fed despite a less than kind summer. The morning fog is rising, the grass wet with morning dew. There is ample feed left for the cows after the ewes have had their share. The vegetation is thick and varied. The creeks are hidden amongst the trees and shrubs. The Maori regard their land, soil and water as treasures, taonga, and believe they are guardians. We have a similar philosophy and feel privileged to be able to farm this land.
This picture has not only told a story, it represents our model of farming profitably and conveys two key points we wish to make. First, the importance of our family's attachment and commitment to the land. And second, our farming system protects and helps enhance the natural environment.
Our first point, the importance of our family's attachment and commitment to the land, has its basis in the simple love and enjoyment of the environment. As a child and one of 5 children, I remember very few family holidays. The main reason being, my father could not imagine any place he'd rather be than at home on the farm. So our holidays were made up of tramps up into the hills, exploring the gullies, paddling in the creeks and walking the stock trails. Looking back, it was an excellent childhood and lay the foundation for a love and appreciation of the outdoors. My father Patrick is a returned serviceman and in 1954 entered into 3 ballots and drew the farm we have today. Dad was the 3rd legal owner of the property. Remarkable, isn't it, when you consider how young New Zealand agriculture still is in comparison to many of our trading partners.
In 1840, when New Zealand became a nation and the government claimed all land as Crown property, the vast unpopulated land down south was divided into leasehold pastoral land. Where we live in northern Southland, the land was classified as a Murihiku block, the land bought from the Maori south of the Otago province. In 1856, the McNab brothers, Scotsmen, leased some of this land and it was named Rung 112. A description was given in 1859 by Thomas McGibbon. McNab brothers held the whole of the country. It was an immense territory and was well grassed, particularly on the river flats. 3,000 sheep were imported from Australia and it took 2 months to drive them along the banks of the Roriti River to get them to the run. At one stage of their farming in such an isolated district, the brothers forgot what day it was. One brother was sent on his horse to ride along the Roriti River on the chance he would meet someone who could tell them. The McNab land was reduced to 60,000 acres at one stage, and eventually some was sold in the Great Southland land sales of 1896 and 1904. The northern aspect of the Hokanuis and some flat land was sold to a Mr. Shaw. It is from this land, sold back again to the government in 1945 for returned servicemen, that we have the 890 hectares we farm today.
In 1955, Dad took over in his own name. He had to lease first because he couldn't afford to buy. It wasn't the type of farm he wanted initially. Rabbit infested, predominantly tussock country, and the hill only boundary fenced. For the next 12 years it was head down, tail up. Improvements when made were always well thought out and of top quality and have stood the test of time. When Dad came to fence, he took his time, watched how the stock moved, and fenced sympathetically. My parents still live on the property, and Dad still can't imagine a better place to be. Grant and I are firm believers that we are only caretakers of this land, holding it in trust for the next generation. Knowledge of its history, environmental and social, strengthens this resolve.
We know the river flats were well grassed, and we also know the northern portion of the Hokonuis has very little forest remaining as a consequence of historic fires that occurred well over 300 to 400 years ago. The remaining forest was further depleted by more fires, logging and stock grazing. So those areas remaining, although small, are of ecological interest and importance, and we have several of these on our property. The original vegetation would have been matai, totara mixed hardwood forest type. Our bush areas are examples of regeneration, with the main forest type being broadleaf, with the core area containing large old trees well over 100 years old. Other canopy species include marble leaf, tree fuchsia, and we have areas of localised kowhai and a grove of Valeria lineata, which makes up the third covenant.
It was my mother, Mary Ryan, who first suggested bringing the experts, Gay Munro from the QE2 Trust and David Rance from the Department of Conservation, to assess the native areas on our property back in 2006. My mother is a very keen gardener with a strong interest in native plants and a desire to learn more about what was there. While these areas were not fenced off, neither my father nor Grant and I had ever heavily stocked the blocks, so past damage was minimised. For all my family, and now our own family, the bush areas have always been special places. They have been the site for many family picnics, splashing in the creeks, hunting for kura, and childhood explorations. Being involved with the QE2 Trust, Landcare Trust, and the Department of Conservation has not only increased our knowledge of what we have, but exponentially increased its value to us as a family. It is a part of our farm that our non-farming family members can have a huge interest and involvement in. 98 Indigenous species were recorded, with now 4 nationally listed threatened plants. In the future, we look forward to seeing further forest regeneration, in addition to planting out more exposed sites, with the help and the involvement from the children of our local primary school.
While the covenants may seem to take centre stage on our property, it is our open tussock land that is the real star and strength of our farming system. It has its own diversity that now, on many hill country runs, is threatened. With an increasing trend to develop hill country into, apparently, better finishing country, these habitats are becoming more and more scarce as they are sprayed out to make way for new plant cultivars. While this may help increase the viability of some of these properties, rocky knobs and gullies that have limited fertility and help slow down and filter water are in many cases equally affected. We have a number of these rocky outcrops. Insect life here thrives, feeding on the native plants that are particularly suited to the area. Removal of one can mean extinction of another.
In January of this year, we had a skink field day, organised by Janet Gregory, Landcare in Southland, and Ros Cole from the Department of Conservation. We organised a group of children from 2 of our local primary schools to come along. It was an opportunity to learn more, not only for the children, but also ourselves, as to what else was dependent on how we were managing our land. Grant the night before had set traps to hopefully provide examples. Unfortunately, when he went to check on them the next morning, 2 magpies had set up camp nearby. Ros came to the rescue and spent the next 4 hours hunting, so by the time the rest of our party turned out, we had several very nice specimens, not only of skinks, but of geckos as well. This happened to be very fortunate, since the day became hotter and hotter, and further attempts by adults and children to capture any failed to capture any. It also made life less complicated, as Country Calendar was filming the process. The day just seemed to get hotter and hotter, so we made our way down to the creeks and bush for some relief. After much needed food and refreshment, the children set off in search of what they could find in the waterways with their ice cream containers and buckets. One little boy, Connor, aged 7, He'd Googled the night before all about the native fish and kura that could be found, and was a fount of knowledge. The enthusiasm was fantastic. At the end of our week with the Country Calendar film crew, Jeff, the cameraman, said that okay, he didn't get the dramatic lighting or the stunning scenery, but it would be a film that would make Auckland families wish they had a farm to take their kids to in the summer holidays. It is a family farm that probably resembles countless other family farms that have been bought, added to, and sold over the 170 years of agricultural history in New Zealand. It is the very ordinariness, combined with the respect and acknowledgement of the native biodiversity, that speaks volumes. Add to it a profitable farming business, and you have a sustainable farming enterprise.
Which brings us to our second point. Our farming system protects and helps enhance the natural environment. This is represented by our stock classes, interacting naturally with the environment and themselves. We have bred animals that prosper naturally, where they are not reliant on chemicals and drenches. Running high pasture covers so our animals are fully fed, which in turn allows for retention of habitat, not only around creeks and streams, but all over our land. Retaining the silver and red tussocks are an integral part of our philosophy of how we want to farm our property. They allow us to hold and retain moisture in the soils and sward where it is needed. Protecting grasses and clovers from cold and hot winds. And as our climate changes, and it has changed quite dramatically down in Southland over the last 10 years, to more infrequent rain patterns, cold, wet springs, and hot, dry summers. The tussocks have played a vital role in our land being far more resilient to handle these extremes. Our animals then have shade and shelter over the entire block, and when storms sweep in from the south, the stock can access shelter close at hand, not having to walk distances to protect themselves. They're also not driven into the gullies where the creeks and streams are, which is why we've retained a high native plant and grass covers along these areas. And actually the day before we were judged, the first judging for the Southland Balanced Farm Environment Awards, we had 60 mils of rain in the 12-hour period leading up to before the judges arrived. And that's a lot of rain for us in that period. The judges were impressed not only with the clarity of the water, but there also wasn't the volume of the water they expected would be flowing down the streams. We were holding that water on the land. It also means our animals are not burning unwanted energy, instead being more settled, turning the dry matter they consume into meat protein, wool, milk for their young, and it all adds up to more profit for our business. We consistently wean 30 to 40% of lambs off mum at 17.8 kg average. We are in the top 2% of Alliance clients for lamb meat yield quality nationwide, all on what many people would consider second-class land. It seems to us that people are too quick to blame the land for lack of profit or poor stock production, when the underlying factors could be poor management, inferior genetics, not fully feeding the animals, or, in fact, all of the above. If you do not feed animals to their potential, they will never reach their potential. At one of our field days, I was asked this question: how do you stop your cattle from eating the silver tussock? Well, I replied, it's pretty simple, really. If the cattle are eating silver tussock, there's nothing else for them to eat. The cows are there to groom the pasture for our sheep units, to chew over excess rank pasture and weeds, and turn poor quality feed into profit. There is no profit in cows eating silver tussock. Under our system, our animals are not polluters. They are contributing to our business and our country's economic well-being year after year. Take, for instance, the population of Hamilton. The area the size of our tussock country would be supporting up to 10,800 people. Well, then you'd see some pollution. The point being, we need to think very carefully when we apportion the blame for the source of perceived pollution. Our animals are positive for our environment, and the way we farm, they enhance it.
Over the last 14 years, we have created enormous positivity and stability in our business. Thinking outside the square and being business owner thinkers means we have gone ahead when many have not. But we haven't done it all on our own. We have surrounded ourselves with successful and innovative business professionals who have worked beside us and with us to achieve our vision. A culture of integrity, loyalty, honesty and consistency has been no more evident than our successful and amenable succession plan. The professionalism and the innovative approach from our accountancy team and lawyer was crucial in realising a positive outcome, not only for our farm business's future, also to help achieve life goals for other family members. Communication was and is the key.
The trend we are told is toward fewer and larger farms, many of them potentially corporate owned. We believe the family farm is essential, not only for farming communities to prosper and thrive with the stability that the family farm provides, but also to protect the environment for future generations. When your drive is to leave your property in a better condition for your descendants, the motivation to do your best for the environment is inherent.
We are also told how increasingly difficult it is for young people to gain ownership of their own farms. And while this is true, for many generations before now it was equally true. Not just gaining ownership, but holding on to it. It is our belief that every generation have their own difficulties and solutions as to how to resolve this problem. But one thing remains constant, and that is the desire and passion to achieve that goal. How it is done will change and adapt, but we firmly believe that despite the hurdles, the family farm will remain the backbone for farming communities throughout New Zealand. Thank you.